So we have the tomato canning machine, which is autonomous at its repetitive job and doesn't require a lot of perceptual or coordination capabilities. And there are the new machines, which are extending more and more towards domains which are more and more ethically sensitive, which raise ethical issues. So then the second thing is the meaningful ethical control. I cannot be as clear as I hope I've been in saying something about machine autonomy. So machine autonomy is essentially operational autonomy. It's not a moral subject, it's not a self-aware subject, it's not capable of deciding on its own desires, on its own reasons. So a machine is basically autonomous a certain task if it performs that task regularly, of course within certain boundary conditions, certain context environments, independently from, I don't want it to be a standalone system, but independently from human interventions, maybe connected to all other kinds of systems. So what we call narrow AI is exactly this, is the idea I take one task or two tasks, not a, a general purpose system, so to speak in terms of intelligence, and I build a machine which does well, or hopefully does well, exactly that thing, okay? So what is then meaningful ethical control? I picked up and transformed something which is being discussed a lot in these days about artificial intelligence, the meaningful human control. But generally in these discussions, what is meant by human is ethical, ethically driven, morally grounded. So I'm using this expression not because I have a definition, but I'm using it, so to speak, as in certain, for its constructive ambiguity, maybe as a starting point for discussion within this forum to develop something of an agenda. Why constructive ambiguity? Because you can understand it in many ways, but it's a starting point that many people can agree on. There is this operational autonomy of machines. Somehow, we have to control it from an ethical point of view, okay? Because we are the moral agents and the machine is not. Okay, that's basically the idea. So I cannot give any necessary condition, and even less so a definition, but maybe one can try to unfold what is this idea of meaningful ethical control, looking at what people are doing. And this agenda maybe can be made much longer. Okay, here I will develop only these points, but what are we doing? What society, what people are doing in public discussion about the ethical control of these machines? One is, okay, I agree that certain tasks is good that machine carries out, but somehow I want to have an ethical policy for that machine. Some kind of high-level specification of how it has to behave. Okay, so you want the machine to carry out that task, but it's an ethically sensitive task, so you want to have some ethical conditions to be satisfied by its behavior. So that's one thing. Then, so you accept that some tasks can, and probably profitably so, performed by machines, but you want to have this constraint. The second point, and this is a sort of summary of what I will do, as I'm trying to say something about this idea of meaningful ethical control, but maybe there are certain tasks that we don't want morally that machines carry out. For example, I suppose it's a far-fetched idea that nobody would like to have a robot to be the primary carer of a baby, changing diapers, for example. Because that's, of course, there is no dexterity. I think that there are overwhelming moral, anthropological reasons why this should not be the case. Because human communication starts there. And you become a human, essentially, in those early and very elemental relationships. But maybe there are things that are more controversial. And public discussion.
Memories from that
You don't have any memory. I know that you don't have. It's good. So you have grown very well because you are supposed to forget a lot about that period. So maybe. Okay, I was saying, making an example or something. So I see that there's more disagreement, but I've seen many people nodding and saying, yes, I don't want ever a robot with a little baby. So that's the second thing. And the other thing is that these autonomous machines have lots of deficiencies from a moral point of view. And we have to offset those deficiencies in their behavior. And we have to continuously, like a Sisyphus, continually carrying this stone up and down, but happily so, trying to make up for those moral deficiencies. If I have time as a sort of final coda, I think another important thing is that human autonomy has to be protected. And we have been talking about a lot today. From what? Must be protected from machine autonomies in certain cases. But if I have time, I'll tell you something. So the first thing is, what about which ethical policies? Well, the very good example that was used before was the example about cars, autonomous driving, driverless cars, okay? Why is that important? I think it's a very simple enables one to bring out very clearly with things that we are all familiar with, in terms of that we are all familiar with, basic problems with ethical problem solving about developing ethical policies governing this machine autonomy. Because ethical problem solving has many steps. It's not that it starts in a vacuum. We have a long tradition of moral principles. For example, we have duty-oriented ethics, which focuses on certain obligations and rights. Then you may pick up what is your favorite duty ethics, but that's a big family of ethics. And then you have consequence-oriented ethics. I focus only on consequences, trying to maximize or approximate some unknown welfare function, or to promote collective welfare, okay? For example, I don't care at all if I am of this school, of ethical school, I don't care at all if the automobile firm is very greedy and wants to develop automatic autonomous driving. Because all I'm interested in are not intentions, but the consequences. The consequences will be good. So I don't care about the greedy attitude of the person who's approving as a CEO this project. It's doing good, well. It's praiseworthy because the consequences will be good. Okay, we know that from this, we have moral conflicts inside ourselves. So we know that from all of these principles, sometimes conflicts arise, tensions. We know that, for example, medical beneficence, which is clearly a consequentialist, not duty-oriented, conflicts as a requirement with respect to patient autonomy. I know that the best thing to do for you is this, but I respect your decision to not accept this kind of cure. Or, for example, prevention of terrorist acts when the ticking bomb is going, and you have as a sort of basic right, and then as a incompressible duty, that you don't have to torture people. So these things may come in conflict. And when this kind of ethical reasoning is well rounded out. It's well rounded out when you end up with a way of diffusing these moral tensions, and you develop a policy. Policy requires solution of those problems, and there is no algorithm to do that. There is a lot of soft skill and reasoning and discussion, which means essentially prioritizing some principles and making compromises. Here, maybe some more scientific and technical work can start properly, or societal work, or this is the outcome when it goes from general principles to ethical policy development. This is the outcome of ethical analysis for public discussion and deliberation, or even internal deliberation. So let me illustrate this with the well-known examples concerning autonomous driving, which is very abstract, but it can be made more concrete, described in probabilistic terms, and so on and so forth, but the unavoidable collisions. So consider the first example. You bought your car because you don't have, unfortunately, time to take one of your children to school. Okay, so you put the child on the car, and the car comes at this crossroad. The pedestrian are crossing, has only two chances. One chance is to go on this New Jersey on the left-hand side, or to hit this nice family that maybe not in a not very prudent, cautious way was crossing the street. Okay, what should you do? Well, here you have possibly, I mean, if you look it from the point of view of the car owner, you may feel you have a special duty to protect your son. After all, that's what you do generally, even in the park, with respect to protecting the children of other people. And so you would like to have this car to be programmed with a policy protecting the passengers, because you have a special duty towards that passenger. On the other hand, if you look at the at the maximization or minimization of harm, then you should really put in danger the passenger and not hit the family. Okay? So here you have certainly two different moral principles which take you in different directions. But these are conflicts that you find between different families of ethical theories. But even within each family, you find conflicts. So let's look at the general consequentialist families of focusing on minimization of harm. Okay? And take this very schematic example. All things being equal, you can hit this one or this other cyclist. And what will you do? Well, if you want to minimize harm, here and now, what you do, probably you will have to hit this one because he's wearing a helmet. Okay?
You should brake before you hit any of them.
Of course, but you are not, but then you are escaping the situation.
Very artificial.
No, wait a second. There are, you are an engineer. You don't think that your technologies will be perfect. You will improve technologies, and so some unavoidable collisions are possible. Some unavoidable collisions are possible because the environment in which you put your system is very difficult to predict, especially because there are human beings. You may make assessment on a probabilistic level whether, which to prefer on other grounds, but sometimes the probabilities are so close to each other that you really, it's like, you have, if you don't make a choice, you have to toss a coin. So I think that you can make it much more realistic. Now we are simplifying and making it very idealized just because, well, that some of these cars have already caused accidents, and some of these accidents could have looked like these ones. So you would have to hit this one because it is more protected. So damages in here and now will be less. But then think of what happens in the public opinion. The public opinion says, imagine a town like, I don't know, Copenhagen or Amsterdam where there are so many cyclists. Okay, so we have a mixed traffic. So if these cars are programmed so as to hit people who wear a helmet over the ones who don't, well, I'm not sure tomorrow I will wear a helmet. But then, of course, in the long run, the damages will be much more. So depending, yes, please.
Nobody wears a helmet in Amsterdam.
Nobody wears. That's okay, great. Okay. Okay, good. That's a good. I don't know. I'm kind. You know, I had a hope that in Amsterdam things were like that because I come from Naples, Italy, and nobody wears with motorcycle helmets, you know, and nobody wears seat belts. So that's what we are. Unfortunately, I don't have any hope. We are exporting our bad habits. Okay, so it depends on the time, on the window, temporal or spatial window according to which you evaluate these things. So you may have many different evaluations. So here now we have which point we are at? At the second point. So we have the plurality of principles, and we have. I don't have to justify right now this principle. We have long tradition. Somebody has talked about Aristotle. We are talking here about consequentialism, Bentham, the English school, Kant with the duty. So we can discuss all of that if we had more than for additional 45 minutes. But we are here. If we stop here, then we have not done a nice job because we don't have any consistent set of specifications for the engineer to work on for ethical controllers of these vehicles. So we have to do something different. A recent proposal, for example, trying to meet these problems and diffusing tensions, comes from an ethical commission which was nominated by the German Ministry of Transportation and Digital Infrastructure. And concerning only this, they have many rules in their code of ethics. Concerning this one, they have a sort of mixed, really a compromise suggestion, which goes into a certain direction, which is not, fleshed out in every detail. There is a deontological rule at the beginning, which has absolute priority. You cannot make any distinction based on sex, age, what else, physical or mental constitution. One head is one head. Okay, that's important because, for example, it eliminates, for example, even the willingness of a very old person who would like to make a supererogatory act, something that we may praise, but that it's not required. Okay, come over me. I'm sorry. Come over me because I'm very old and there is a little girl. I want her to live. So that's the first point. The second deontological thing is that there are people who are involved into the accident because they are driving, because they are crossing the street. But if you are a faraway bystander, then you should not get involved. Somehow there is a certain... But then, so there is a deontological priority, and then there is a consequential default. Given those priorities, then I translate it very badly from German, but it is as big as this one. Some kind of general programming is permitted to reduce victims, so to minimize harm. Okay? So this is a mixed proposal, but there are many others. So we have to choose. So the task of ethics is to bring these proposals as clear as possible for public discussions and deliberation.
I'm just wondering whether how does this address the trolley experiment? What do these principles say about the trolley experiment?
Okay. If you have, not those two, but many similar cases. But let me say, for example, if you have not the two cyclists, but an old person and a young person, you cannot decide to hit the...
2 versus 1 or 5 versus 1?
5 versus 1.
C1 would say that I can
That's okay. The first one doesn't apply, and then you can bring this in. Okay, you see there is a prioritization. You are a master of these things. So there is a prioritization. When it does not apply, you have other clauses. Okay, of course it's only very, very general, right? And if you have one bystander and 3 people who are involved, you cannot adopt C1. You see.
C1 also in the case of helmet and no helmet, right?
Helmet or non-helmet might. No, it depends. It depends if you have the narrow window or the wide window. Because if you have the wide window, then maybe you should not systematically hit the one with the helmet. Maybe you have to toss a coin. I don't know. But there are serious. I think these are serious problems. But of course, you can make lots of more detailed problems even at the current level of automation. I am going with my car. Oh, what a nice landscape. I'm on the Amalfi Coast. There is the sea or Big Sur. And I see for a kilometer ahead, there is nobody coming from the other lane, nobody back. Well, I just trespass a little bit my lane. What should the automatic controller do? To respect my freedom, my autonomy, or to force me to do that thing? So that, I'm just trying to make things very schematic and simple. So, but we have many competing models. For example, if we don't come to an agreement between consequentialist and and duty-oriented ethics, then maybe we can find intersection where no conflicts arise. But that's the segregationist, essentially politics. You have those cars only on special motorways where these things become even less likely to happen. Okay, if not impossible, but we don't want to say impossible. It's a very difficult thing to say. But then you lose something. You lose the advantages that Moshe Vardi was talking about, of reducing drastically the victims of the road, which is very important from both the ontological and consequentialist point of view. Then you may have a liberal policy. Namely, you have an ethical knob, and you can switch from a more passenger protecting policy or say, no, I'm very generous, I want to minimize in any case. So that's the liberal. And of course, he prizes a lot freedom because you are free to do that. Okay? But here again, you may lose some advantages because I suppose that lots of people may choose, well, he's protecting family, I should do the same. And so you lose this minimization of harm policies. And then there is a paternalist policy, enlightened paternalism, but paternalist in the sense that you decide, at a certain point society decides and that's it. Okay? I tend to have, also for tradition with regulation of how we should behave on the road, I tend to agree more with this one. But I know that there is a lot of discussion about this one, and that one will probably be the beginning anyway. Okay. Yeah.
Paternalist is the categorically imperative.
No, because no, not at all. No, don't. Your gymnasium is not helping you this moment. No. Your memories. No, it's a mix. It's a mix of the ontological. So that's one. So how much time did I?
You have 10 more.
Ooh, okay. So morally forbidden task. You probably know that there is a lot of discussion going on right now on autonomous weapon systems. Autonomous weapon systems have 2 critical functions. At least the necessary conditions. They are able to select and engage military targets once they've been activated, without human intervention, any other human intervention. This is a definition, not a definition, but somehow a description of salient properties from the Department of Defense of the United States. Okay? There are legacy systems that already satisfy this broad definition, others more sophisticated systems that are being developed. Okay? So that's an interesting case of an ongoing discussions right now at the United Nations, at the Convention on Conventional Weapons, which is meeting in Geneva, okay, at the EU Parliament, in various in various individual countries, single countries. Okay, about this, should we give machines this possibility or not? Again, we have a heated debate. The heated debate, let's start from the consequentialist. Those who favor this possibility, what do? They say, well, let's look at the narrow window of the battlefield. In the narrow window of the battlefield, probably these machines, these weapons will be more conservative because there is nobody who's risking their life, will be more precise, will be immune from human emotions. So they are very good things. But on the same, without refusing... IHL is international humanitarian law. Laws in war, but I'll tell you more about that. While those who accept the consequentialist framework anyway and try to oppose the autonomous weapons make the window wider. Look at the acceleration in the pace of war beyond human capabilities, especially with interactions that you don't know, you don't have very good models to describe or to predict. The cyber vulnerability and the unpredictability of interactions, destabilizing effect on regional and global scale, a new arms race, and these weapons which remain like the landmines, but more dangerously surveying the land, and even threats to nuclear deterrence, like the pugwash. Who mentioned the pugwash? You mentioned the British pugwash made very clear in the sense that autonomous submarines may make a stalking of the nuclear submarines of the opposing part, so that the MAD deterrence, mutual assured destruction deterrence, would somehow be eroded. Okay, so what on the other, people who oppose this kind of autonomy want to have a meaningful ethical control and responsibility of humans, move also on the other deontological side and say three things essentially. That you have to distinguish between civilians and military legitimate objectives. How can you do that in erratic warfare scenarios? That's difficult. Already humans have difficulty, and it may be very difficult for more difficult for machines. The second is that if you allow these machines to dynamically select their objectives, okay, then the responsibility chain, the command and responsibility chain, which is so important also for military dignity, because they take very serious responsibilities, somehow is eroded. You have a many hands problem, you have a difficulty, you have the responsibility gaps. And so if you have something that machine does, and if were done by human, would amount to a war crime, who's responsible for that? So that's another very important. The third thing is a human dignity. Again, the kind of Kantian thing, because if you look at it not from the actor, but from the recipient of the action, then you have, of course, humans can be very cruel, but we know also many the anecdotes and stories from war times where things were solved in different ways. The potential victims of autonomous weapon systems cannot make appeal to the shared humanity of persons placed on the other side. In a certain sense, it's an algorithm already that, somehow has made its decision, and there is. So I think probably not many, I don't know how many of you know that Austria is playing an important role in this debate, because last year, in the penultimate meeting of this UN Convention on Conventional Weapons, together with Brazil and Chile, proposed made a proposal which was not unanimously approved towards what? Towards ensuring that moral agency is behind always the operation of an autonomous weapon system. So that in ways in which this moral agency is jeopardized, then autonomy must be curbed properly. Of course, there is not one size of moral agency and control that fits all of these machines. So then there is a lot of discussion on how to tailor this to the current technologies. But Austria has asked the UN Assembly to establish an open-ended group of governmental experts to negotiate a legally binding instrument to ensure meaningful human control, and I say ethical because it's more, the moral arguments behind, over critical functions of little autonomous weapon system. I just remember that 2 or 3 years ago, when Moshe Vardi was editor of the CACM, there was a short debate about that too. The final point is that I think that, there are very bad arguments about the fact that we should replace human judgment with machine judgment, human decisions with machine decisions. One very bad argument, I think, is about, comes from empirical research concerning US and Israeli judges. You know that parole rulings, which were milder, more lenient, dropped from 65% to nearly zero when the judge, the level of sugars in her blood or his blood was going down before noon. And while again, the judgment was milder after a good lunch. So of course there are the same things about bail decisions. They were about on data collected on past experiences of judges. They've compared the results of a learning machine with humans, and machines did better in terms of predicting the possibility of committing another crime. Okay, statistically better. We have to that's important. Well, of course there are ethical issues here. I mean, all of these points to violation of rationality, fairness, and equality before the law. Increased social harm. So there are both the ontological and consequentialist important problems. So let's put a machine in place of the judge. No, I don't think that's a good decision, because having a moral agent there fulfills many other important roles. So I point out to 3 things. One is AI disasters. Maybe perform statistically better, but when they go wrong, they may go badly wrong, because they are not helped by common sense. So this is going back to the example of the autonomous driving. This slightly defaced, modified road sign was interpreted by the learning system as a speed limit rather than as a stop, okay, when defaced. So there are, the data representations and the processing and the features that are used to classify are sort of opaque to us. So we have to have some moral agency to prevent AI disasters of this kind. Of course, here, the particular case, you can resolve it with the redundancy, blah, blah. You are engineers, much better than me know all of this. The second is the very famous stuff that, the multiple sources of biases inherited from humans, coming from necessarily from the ML algorithms as initial settings anyway. And here is a famous example about an algorithm which assigns police patrols to different neighborhoods. But then if you want to refine this model, what you will get? You will get new police patrolling of both human and machine biases. And yes, sure. And the final thing is that it was already mentioned. Okay, better performances, but what are the dimensions around which we evaluate better performances? When I would like to ask about, ethically sensitive decisions by machine. Why was I not given that bank loan? Why I was allowed or not allowed to be in my lane or to trespass my lane? Why did I get this medical diagnosis and therapy? Generally, humans give imperfect, but they try to find reasonable explanations of a contrastive type. The question in response to this question, why X instead of Y1 or Y2 or YN? And this is not the case with the current machine learning systems to which most of the progresses in applications are currently due. So this is, we know that the Article 22 of the GDPR doesn't establish a right to explanation, but puts the burden on the system controller. The system administrator is system controller. So if I didn't get a loan, just because I'm in a neighborhood where the general probability is higher, that loans don't get repaid, well, I would like to ask why. The machine doesn't have to do that, but you ask to the human controller. But then the human controller would like to know why the machine did that in order to satisfy to this request. So this, in Europe, definitely this is creating problems, interesting problems. Well, I'm done. Okay, so the code about, protecting, we'll be talking about Cambridge Analytica, about the Chinese social credit system. I put only one slide at the end. No, this is not Das Leben der Anderen. No. Okay, Norbert Wiener. I think he was a pioneer in AI, robotics, and cybernetics ethics. And I like this very much, this quote. In God and Golem he wrote, the future, I just read it. The future offers very little hope for those who expect that our new mechanical slaves will offer us a world in which we may rest from thinking. Help us they may, but at the cost of supreme demands on two things: honesty, morality, ethics, and intelligence. The world of the future will be an ever more demanding struggle against the limitations of our intelligence and honesty, not a comfortable hammock in which we can lie down to be waited upon our robot slaves. Good ethical problem solving about artificial intelligence, autonomous machines to everybody.
Thank you a lot. So, first, second.
So from what I said, I came to the following conclusion. Tell me if I'm wrong. For disruptive changes like, these autonomous vehicles, for which, it's very hard to define from scratch because we don't have them yet living. Define from scratch all the ethical implications and all the possible policies that you might think about, putting in place to solve the problems. So it seems to me that here is the role of governments, which is slow down developments, make them possible in controlled ways. You mentioned before, for example, for autonomous vehicles, to put them in certain conditions where they can go around, maybe just in, with other autonomous vehicles, so they don't meet with the unpredictability of humans. So this is the role of governments, not to prevent developments, but to gain experience on possible, meaningful ways to reason and implement those ethical policies that need to be in place, but that are impossible, basically, to define from scratch. Is that a fair conclusion that one can draw from what you said?
Well, I would say more public discussion than government, maybe Trump or Salvini in Italy or whoever. No, let's say public discussion. So this is what ethics has to offer. A number of reasoned alternatives of general models. Then, of course, this thing should be.
But if you leave the freedom to industry.
No. I'm not saying that. But it's not just government. All stakeholders. Yeah, there should be a public deliberation which is bigger than just the people we voted for. Okay, if we have the opportunity, if we had. But no, there are so many other things in autonomous driving. It's really a well of interesting problems. For example, a point may come in which either on certain segments of the net or on all the net, you want to prohibit people from driving, not just letting them have this opportunity of, relaxing, so to speak, eyes off. Hands off, eyes off. But because they just will be like today drunkards with respect to the autonomous driving. So there are lots, and so that's a curbing of human freedom. But it's like smoking in public. In public. So there are lots of these things. Sure, it's public discussion.
Yeah, I'd like to discuss briefly the first part of your talk. So, machine that decides what's good and what's bad. You pointed out, for instance, to the deontological rules and so. And I'd like to come back to the trolley experiments that were pointed out by Moshe before. So, after a long tradition of philosophical approaches since 30, 40 years, this new tradition of checking human behavior without too much constraints appeared. And basically, trolley experiments were made for stretching situations so that dilemmas appear, and dimensions on which the moral decision is made appear. So, most important, the fact that affect, emotion, is an important factor in accepting as moral a certain act or not accepting it. It's not just a matter of rules or of, say, cost benefits, 5 and 1 and these things, but there is a difference if emotion is involved in the situation. And there are many other aspects then that have been studied and so on. So now coming to our issue. I think that the real important thing that comes from this experience, important for AI, is acceptability. Acceptability. So first, do you attribute to machine the same acceptability that you would give to humans that behave in a similar situation? First thing. Second thing, which is not a given, it should be assessed. And second thing, could could you take into account a certain specific society, because the similar experiments done in different societies or different stages of development would give different results. So it is basically a bottom-up approach that would give some input for decision making, but basically at the level of acceptability by a given society, not something different.
Okay. You can have also variants of these mental experiments without the emotion. Okay, on both sides, on the duty and on. But that's a sort of side issue. Okay, so what you are saying is that the cultural dependence of ethics, right? Essentially, but this, to a certain extent, is correct. But to another extent, we all feel that these principles pulling into different directions belong to each one of us. So we have already a problem inside ourselves, in foro interno, as you would say, to resolve. And we try to do that, sometimes not as an optimal problem solver, but and not every psychological aspect of acceptability it's not that anything goes. Okay, there are certain things that are more important from a normative point of view, and other things are not, and they pertain to multicultural. Then there is trying to understand, trying to arrive. It's not always the case that you arrive at a solution. I say, I hope that the driverless cars will be a happy circumstance, or the other thing, or prohibiting complete autonomy of weapon systems with a certain, that's my because all in all you have to take a decision, which policy to adopt and which not. But multiculturalism is important. It's important for the acceptability, because of course the moral machine experiment which appeared in Nature, and the other one before in Science. So there are lots of these problems, but these are more of a psychological dimension. I was thinking more from a normative ethical perspective, and so the psychological is partly overlapping, but it's a different matter. It's interesting, but it's a different.
So.
The question is short and the answer is short.
Oh yeah, right.
Okay, I'll be short. It's regarding the trolley problem again. I think in the case of human drivers, usually they don't actually have time to even do the evaluation. But when they're given time in studies, as the previous questioner pointed out, they're often biased, racist, arbitrary, and so forth. And so they don't necessarily make very good decisions. And moreover, humans are also not very good at seeing stop signs. I have two friends who were badly injured when human-driven cars ran stop signs, and they ended up in rather serious accidents. My question is, why shouldn't we use this to prohibit humans from driving cars?
Yeah, but that's, in a way, that's what Bardi was saying about, promoting automated driving. And, I completely agree from both the consequentialist and the ontological point of view, but then you still have the problems of certain choices that the cars have to make because their latency time is much more reduced than ours. So reaction times are... At least we have a choice. That's good. But that's my argument was, yes, we want to have automated driving. Only that we have to somehow govern it from an ethical point of view. And my sort of very general suggestion for the declaration or whatever maybe is to have something about the meaningful ethical control of machines into that, maybe, or some very general as I said, as an ambiguous but constructive hint. Okay.
Thank you. I thoroughly enjoyed your talk. I would have liked to see your other slides as well. I have two comments. The first is very short. I think what you, the examples you gave us about medicine and jurisdiction, they confirm what I said before, that machines support humans, but they will not and should not replace them. So they help us in making good decisions, but the final decision has to be made and communicated by human beings. That's the first thing. And the second thing, the second question I have is, don't you think that some of your ethical problems, I'm not a philosopher, but could be solved by putting clear rules in liability? So, for example, the stop sign thing. We have to say beforehand who is liable or who is responsible if there's an accident. Is it the programmer of the car? Is it the programmer of the traffic control system? Is it the person crossing the street, or is it the person who tainted the stop sign? But if we have clear rules about this responsibility, many of your ethical issues might be solved.
Might, in the sense that I'm not sure that all will vanish, bringing general principles without exceptions into practice, especially when we have so many actors, may raise many hands problems and easy ways to evade responsibility, so to speak, in the court. But that's another story. What were you saying? I don't remember anymore. You were saying something else, but I forgot. Sorry. Yeah, please.
Yeah, not sure if I got your statement on one of your last slides correctly, where you told that machine learning doesn't give you all the information to make sure how the decision was made.
Yeah, that's for
because
sure.
I cannot confirm it, because the system gives you all the information that you need, and you can clearly make sure how reliable the decision made by the system was. And if you hide this part of the information, the interpretability of the data, then it's not the fault of the machine learning, it's just a lack of a feature in your system.
Yeah, sorry, but which kind of system are you talking?
I'm talking about all of the statistical analyses, which are the basics for the machine learning, for deep learning, all is about probability.
Well,
and
you see that, okay. But you see, for example, if you automatize even the selection of the features, and then, because it's a time-consuming job for humans to do, then you don't even know what are the real features that, as you see in the case of the stop sign, which have been used, whether they are interpretable in human senses, or independently of whether the fact that the I/O function is better approximated by the desired one by the machine rather than by the humans. But it's, so to speak, it's not a decision tree. It's not a symbolic processing systems always. But I'm not a computer scientist, so I stop here and I leave other people maybe to address this more.
Okay, thank you. Thank you a lot.